The Andes is the world's longest mountain range. At the southernmost tip of the chain, beautiful blue glaciers have been nurtured by the mountains. Water spilling over the top of the world's largest waterfall makes a tremendous sound. Here, creatures have been evolving while trying to survive in what is truly a harsh environment. Spanning the equator to near the South Pole, South America possesses a great variety of stunning natural wonders. This is a land which was created in time immemorial, when there was still no sign of life on Earth. Believed to be dwelling places of the gods, these mountains have preserved the ancient memories of our planet. The Guiana Highlands spread across northern South America. With Venezuela located in the center, the highlands unfold for some 1.2 million square kilometers. Situated in the middle of the highlands is Canaima National Park, which has an area of 30,000 square kilometers. The entire region is known as the Gran Sabana, or the Great Savannah. Mount Ayán Tepuy, which has a height of 2,560 meters, was given its name, which means Devil's Mountain, by the Aboriginal people of the area. It is the largest tepuy, or table mountain, in the park. More than 101-kilometer high table mountains tower straight up from the floor of the Guiana Highlands. The region is also rich in mineral resources, such as gold and diamonds. Many adventurers came here looking for the fabled city of El Dorado during the age of Spanish colonization in the 16th century. The thick, dark forests which encircle the base of the mountains, however, made this land all but impenetrable. The steep cliffs even stop the migration of animals and plants. The Guiana Highlands, still mostly unknown to the world, is often called the Lost World. This lost world has drawn its fair share of adventurers over the ages. The original inhabitants of the Gran Sabana were the Pemon people. The Pemon revere these tabletop mountains, referring to them as Tepuy, which means sacred place where the gods dwell. A deep jungle encircles the mountain. Since it is basically inaccessible to humans, many animals have made this their home. The sloth lives in the forests of Central and South America. These creatures spend most of their lives in the trees, sleeping for some 20 hours a day. This is a poison dart frog. Its vivid coloring indicates to its enemies that it's poisonous. The frog received its name from the original inhabitants of the region, who used its poison to make poison arrows for hunting. The Gran Sabana has had a tropical climate since ancient times. The moisture-laden winds blowing in from the Atlantic Ocean form an updraft when they hit the mountains of the Guiana Highlands. This produces clouds. Because of these conditions, the tops of Table Mountains are almost always covered in thick clouds. The weather here is quite unpredictable, with an annual rainfall of more than 3,000 millimeters. The rain, falling on the top of the mountains, runs off the side of the cliffs, eroding them in the process. The Guiana Highlands are thought to have formed when Africa and South America were connected as one continent. Each grain of sand drifting downstream along the river contains the memories of these ancient times on Earth. The Guiana Highlands are formed from some of the oldest rocks on the planet, which date back approximately 2 billion years. The whole area is thought to have originally been on the bottom of a lake or the ocean, and that was where it acquired its stratum of sandstone, formed by the accumulation of sand and rocks. Approximately 700 million years ago, when the continents began drifting apart, this land was heaved up, becoming a towering highland of sandstone. As the land was raised, countless cracks were formed which were then deeply eroded away by hundreds of millions of years of rain. What was left was a layer of hard granite. It was at the end of the 19th century when adventurers first set foot on the top of these Table Mountains, discovering what a prehistoric world looked like. It is also a silent world that no sound from outside can reach. Due to the continuation of the tropical climate over a long stretch of time, the creatures isolated here on the tops of the mountains have evolved in many unique ways. This is a Stegolepis plant of the Rapataceae family. The plants of the Rapataceae family mainly grow in the forests of South America. However, the plants are also found on the African continent. This is evidence of how at one point these two continents were one. Four 4,000 species of plants have been confirmed in the Guiana Highlands. Some of these plants have retained primitive characteristics, such as orchids and pineapples. Of these species, 75% are endemic to the Guiana Highlands, and therefore cannot be found anywhere else on Earth. Within this extremely rocky soil grow various species of insectivorous plants, such as the Helianthera pitcher plants and Drosera rotundifolia. This small black frog, a species of Oreophrynella, is one of the most primitive living creatures on Earth. Only 2 centimeters in length, it is unable to swim or jump. The reason why these primitive creatures have survived so long is due to the fact that they have remained here in complete isolation. In 1912, about 30 years after the first British explorers climbed to the top of the Table Mountains, British writer Sir Arthur Conan Doyle released his novel The Lost World, which was set in the Guiana Highlands. Humans took to the skies in airplanes for the first time at the beginning of the 20th century. In the 1930s, American adventurer Jimmy Angel visited the Guiana Highlands in his airplane in search of El Dorado. Trying to locate possible gold mines from the sky, he discovered the enormous waterfall that would later become known as Angel Falls. The world's tallest waterfall, falls 1,000 meters down from the rocks to the bottom. The fall is so tall that most of the water turns into mist by the time it reaches the bottom. Even today, in the 21st century, this vast highland of extraordinary beauty has preserved many untold secrets that continue to attract nature lovers and scientists from all over the world. A broken field of black basaltic lava, thrown into the most rugged waves and crossed by great fissures. The dry and parched surface, being heated by the noonday sun, gave to the air a close and sultry feeling, like that from a stove. These were Charles Darwin's first impressions of the Galapagos Islands when he visited them in 1835. The Galapagos Islands are located 960 kilometers west of the South American continent, floating in the Pacific Ocean, situated right on the equator. The island, which was formed by submarine volcanic eruptions, sees continuing volcanic activity even today. The most recent eruption of note happened in 1995 on Fernandina Island. The oldest existing island within the archipelago is thought to have been created only about 5 million years ago. The Galapagos Islands are a young chain of islands within the Earth's long history. The ancestors of the creatures of the Galapagos Islands are thought to have reached this remote location from South America by flying or floating here on the ocean's currents. When he landed on these shores, Darwin was surprised that the animals were not afraid of humans, making no attempts to run away from them. The animals of these remote islands have lived without having any natural predators. Many are totally unique to this place. His experiences in seeing these unique creatures stimulated Darwin to go on to expound his theory of evolution. Birds and animals gather in these abundant waters around the Galapagos Islands for fish. The waters are full of fish due to the abundance of plankton, which are located in a place where cold currents flow into these warm waters. The existence of penguins also greatly surprised Darwin, since these islands are located right on the equator. The Galapagos Islands are the only place near the equator that are inhabited by penguins. With the influence of the cold Peru Current, the temperature of the seawater is very low, and the surrounding air temperature is cooler compared to other equatorial regions. In his journal, Darwin questioned why it was that while the rest of equatorial South America was tropical, these islands were like a desert. He also wondered why most of the animals he saw here he had seen nowhere else on Earth. These questions would only loom larger for him. This land iguana is waiting under a prickly pear cactus for one of its favorite foods, an utter flower, to fall down. Land iguanas, which have cacti as their main food source, grow to approximately 1 meter in length. The iguana cannot easily reach the fruit on the tall prickly pear cactus, so must wait for the nuts and flowers to fall down. The ancestors of the Galapagos iguanas are thought to have arrived on these islands by riding on floating objects along the current from South America. Darwin was surprised to find the creatures dive underwater to collect seaweed. He spent much time observing their unique ecology. There is little food on these islands. To adapt, marine iguana evolved to start finding their food from the ocean, where food such as seaweed was plentiful. The marine iguana is able to eat seaweed underwater for as long as 10 minutes. They have evolved webbed feet with long, sharp nails for grasping onto rocks in the strong current. Their tails have also evolved, becoming flat and vertical in order to be used for paddling in the water. When coming back to land from the sea, the iguana will sometimes spew out seawater it had swallowed. This is another way the iguanas have adapted to live on these barren islands. Darwin noticed that there were some creatures which showed marked differences within the same species, depending on which island they lived on. The giant tortoise, weighing more than 200 kilograms, is one of these animals. The major differences in the giant tortoises of the Galapagos Islands, of which 14 subspecies have been confirmed, are the shape of their shells. This is easily discernible when looking at their necks. Tortoises living on islands with abundant grass have tall, dome-shaped shells. Tortoises living on islands with less grass have saddled back shells, which were adapted to be able to better reach plants growing at higher points off the ground. Their differences are not that apparent for the first 5 years of their lives, but become increasingly apparent as they become adults. Tortoises were aggressively hunted, and their numbers drastically reduced relatively recently. During the 1950s, some 100 years after Darwin published his Origin of Species, the natural conservation movement began shifting into full gear. The Charles Darwin Research Station was established in 1964 for the purpose of studying and protecting the natural environment of the Galapagos Islands. Thanks to the efforts of the research station, the number of living giant tortoises, an animal that once faced extinction, has increased, and the pristine nature of the Galapagos Islands has been protected. The Galapagos Islands are sometimes referred to as a laboratory of organic evolution. This fact is made apparent when we take a look at this small bird, known as Darwin's finch. Darwin was especially interested in the shape of this creature's beak. The finch has a large and strong beak like a pair of pliers, which is ideal for cracking open hard plant seeds to eat. The finch's beak is long, making it an ideal instrument for drinking pollen or honey. The 13 species of finches on the Galapagos Islands are all derived from one common species. Their special adaptations to various habitats on the island are a result of adaptive radiation. These adaptations occurred in order to make the most of the limited food sources by filling in various ecological niches. In the Galapagos Islands, adaptations like this continue even today. Extreme changes in weather patterns, alternating every few years, for example, cause changes in the island's environment, which affects the creatures as well. In the 1980s, a unique iguana appeared on the island of South Plaza. The iguana had a striped pattern on its body. It was of a kind that had not been seen before at the time, and is thought to be a hybrid between the marine iguana and the land iguana. Their back feet are webbed. The trigger was the El Niño phenomenon. During El Niño, the ocean temperatures rose, resulting in reduced seaweed. The marine iguana, facing a reduced food supply, went back on land again, which resulted in the evolution of this new hybrid species. These creatures are evidence that evolution continues in the Galapagos Islands even today. The hybrid iguana is able to climb up the stern of a tall cactus. This is possible because they have the sharp nails of the marine iguana species. Hence, both in space and time, we seem to be brought somewhere near to that great fact, that mystery of mysteries, the first appearance of new beings on this earth. Darwin devoted his life to unlocking the mystery of mysteries surrounding the birth of a new species, and laid out his theory of evolution to try and solve some of the mysteries. The Galapagos Islands were essential to Darwin's own understanding of evolution, and they still serve to dazzle us with the mystery of life today. Brazil's Pantanal Conservation Area, located almost directly in the middle of the South American continent, unfolds between the Andes Mountains and the Brazilian highlands. Pantanal means Great Wetlands in Portuguese. Located in the central western part of Brazil and straddling Bolivia and Paraguay, it has almost the same land area as Honshu Island in Japan. 1,878 square kilometers of this region was registered as a UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site in 2000. Known as a wildlife paradise, the Pantanal is the only place on Earth where one can see such a wide variety of species in one place. The wetlands are a result of overflowing rivers. This happens during the rainy season every year from November to April. During the preceding dry season, the waters gradually subside, leaving grasslands in their wake. This cycle of overflowing and receding waters is repeated every 6 months, year after year, resulting in an incredibly rich ecosystem. In April, which marks the end of the rainy season, the entire area resembles a great lake. At this time, approximately 70% of the Pantanal becomes submerged. The water level between the rainy season and the dry season is said to vary by some several meters. The reason why this area can support such a rich ecosystem is due to the cycle of water. Grasses, which have matured during the dry season, begin to decompose when they are submerged during the ensuing wet season. This decomposition results in the abundant growth of plankton. Fish then thrive in the plankton-rich waters, and indeed there are more than 260 species of fish here, including piranhas and fish that attain lengths of up to 1 meter. In the Pantanal, the way in which the food chain in the animal world centers on fish is made very clear. Spectacled caimans are the great hunters of the wetlands. One wonders what this odd-looking group of caiman is doing. With the advent of the dry season, the fish begin moving out of the swampland, where the water level is rapidly declining toward the rivers. The wily caiman quietly wait for the approaching fish in the middle of the river. The annual rainfall in the Pantanal is less than that of bordering tropical rainforest areas. Having a semi-humid savanna climate, the wetlands have a distinct dry season. The reason why this area has been able to maintain such a productive wetland lies hidden in the unique terrain itself. Approximately 100 million years ago, the Pantanal was a cove in the Pacific Ocean. Later, it became an isolated basin surrounded by the mountains of the Brazilian highlands, after the Andes were heaved upward. Since the slopes of the Pantanal Basin are gentle, the water level declines very slowly, by several centimeters per month. Because of this slow drainage, the wetlands never fully dry up in the areas by the rivers, even during the dry season. It is these year-round wetlands that support the extremely rich biodiversity of the area. The capybara is the world's largest rodent, growing to around 1 meter in length. Capybara means master of the grasses in the language of the native Indians. These creatures love nothing more than eating the new grass that sprouts up here at the beginning of the dry season. Extremely easy targets for any carnivorous predators, they mostly spend time in groups at the water's edge. If attacked by another creature, they can actually dive into the water. The natural predator of the capybara is the anaconda. The largest snake in the world, the anaconda can grow to approximately 8 meters in length. Many species of birds gather in the Pantanal in the dry season to breed. This area also has its own law of the jungle. Black vultures in Caracara prey on the chicks. In August, a thick grassland area appears after most of the water in the swamps has drained. The 6-month-long dry season, during which there was almost no rain, is finally over. This has been a hard environment to survive in for the fish. The rainy season has arrived. The dried-out grasslands soon overflow with water. The animals on the grasslands begin to move to any surface which is not yet flooded. Every year, a great event takes place in the waters of the Miranda River, as the river floods the Pantanal. As the river overflows, millions of fish swim out of the wetlands. Over a period of a month, the fish try to reach the headwaters of the river for spawning. A clear tributary flows into the muddy, yellowish river. These are the river's headwaters and the place the fish are trying to reach. Located approximately 200 kilometers south of the Pantanal, this place is called Bonito. Bonito means beautiful in Portuguese. Since the transparent water enables plenty of sunshine to transcend its depths, an abundance of watergrass grows here. The water's color and clarity is due to a rich source of underground spring water that passes through the limestone layer, which acts as a kind of filter. The water is so clean that there is little plankton for food. Interestingly, only small fish can survive in this pristine water, which is in great contrast to the rich marine life of the Pantanal. At the same time, the place is a safe environment for the eggs and baby fish, with few natural predators roaming the area. This is why the fish of the Pantanal take the arduous month-long journey to Bonito. On the night of the full moon, the fish begin spawning simultaneously. Many unique creatures gather and are nurtured in the Pantanal. This is a land which reminds us of the great productive powers of water. (1,320 kilometers long), the Iguazu River flows in the southern part of Brazil. Along this wide and winding river, Iguazu Falls seemingly appears out of nowhere. On the west side of the river lies Brazil, and on the east, Argentina. In both countries, this area is preserved as a national park. It is also registered as a UNESCO Natural Heritage Site. Iguazu Falls contains some 275 waterfalls of varying sizes. The exact number of waterfalls increases or decreases, depending on the water level of the river. The longest drop is about 80 meters. The great scale of the falls, which spread out over 2,700 meters, makes it the world's largest. Iguazu Falls, along with Niagara Falls and Victoria Falls, is one of the world's greatest waterfalls. Protected within the national park is the Iguazu River and Falls, as well as the surrounding forests. Combining the areas within Brazil and Argentina, the total size of the park is almost as big as Tokyo. Iguazu means great water in the language of the native Indian inhabitants. The quantity of water falling over the falls reaches up to 6,500 tons per second, causing a deafening roar. The largest waterfall in the Iguazu Falls system is the central horseshoe-shaped one. This waterfall was named Devil's Throat by the Guarani Indians, who held it in high regard. It is quite difficult to see Devil's Throat in its entirety, because of the vast quantity of spray. The truly tremendous quantity of spray causes the humidity level around the area to reach nearly 90%. This high humidity nurtures the surrounding subtropical forests, and most of Iguazu National Park is made up of verdant forests rich in both flora and fauna. Orchids grow by absorbing moisture from the air, and can be found all over the moisture-rich forests in Iguazu Park. There are over 60 different species growing here. Taking advantage of the nectar from the abundance of flowers and minerals in the soil around the waterfalls, more than 500 species of butterflies can be found in the forests around this area. The colorful patterns on the butterfly's wings are for deceiving its enemies. On the underside of the wings of the species Diathrea climena, patterns resembling the number 8 are visible. There are some creatures in the park that have a particularly close relationship with the waterfalls. These birds, known as great dusky swifts, plunge at great speed into a torrent of water. This is because they roost behind a great curtain of water. Indeed, thanks to this torrent of falling water, no predator can touch them, and they can therefore have all the insects to themselves. Having adapted to living by clutching onto rocks, their legs are short and their nails are long. These birds spend their entire lives together behind the waterfalls. More than 400 species of birds live off the plants and insects in the area around the river's edge at the bottom of the waterfalls, as well as in the forests. The Toko toucan is a common bird found in the park. It measures more than 60 centimeters in length, and its big beak accounts for 1/3 of its body. The red-rumped cacique rips palm tree leaves into small pieces to cleverly weave a nest. They make these elaborate nests to protect their eggs and chicks from various carnivorous predators. There are 70 species of mammals in these forests, rich in seeds and fruits. Opossums are the only marsupials to have survived on the South American continent. Their survival is attributed to their tree climbing and omnivorous nature, as well as being able to nurture as many as 10 children in their pouches at a time. In the forests of Iguazu, creatures are active even at night. The southern tamandua is a nocturnal animal that looks for ants to eat, both in the trees and on the ground. The ocelot is searching for prey, quietly walking around the forest floor. A mountain cat living in the forests of Central and South America, they are currently in danger of extinction. The Iguazu Park has a subtropical climate with no dry season. The moisture-laden wind, blowing in from the Atlantic Ocean, brings approximately 1,700 millimeters of rain throughout the year. The great power of these plentiful waters is what created the beautiful Iguazu Falls. Iguazu National Park is part of a large plateau formed by the basaltic lava flow of a volcanic eruption from over 135 million years ago. The waterfalls were developed along vertical cracks in the basalt layer, which were formed from erosion over a long period of time. It is thought that approximately 20,000 years ago, the waterfalls were located 28 kilometers downstream of their current location. The pushing back of the falls through erosion continues even today. Iguazu, known as the Great Water by the native Indians who originally lived here, is one of the world's great outpourings of water. The waterfalls are also the life force of the forest, bringing in moisture-laden air that supports a startling diversity of life. The Patagonia region takes up the southern end of the South American continent, enveloping everything beneath 40 degrees south. The world's third largest glacial region after Antarctica and Greenland, it occupies the southwestern part of Patagonia. Los Glaciares National Park is located in the southernmost part of Patagonia, in Argentina. 47 small and large glaciers are dotted here and there over an area of approximately 4,500 square kilometers. In addition to the glaciers, the park contains two large lakes which were created by the erosion of glaciers, and great rolling grasslands known as pampas. The Andes dominates the border with Chile to the west, and it is in these mountains where we can find the source of the glaciers of Patagonia. Mount Fitzroy is the highest mountain in the park. The original inhabitants of the area called the mountain El Chalten, which means mountain that sends out smoke. The Patagonia Andes Mountains are almost always covered in clouds due to the damp subtropical westerlies which blow in from the Pacific Ocean. Snow falls in the mountains here, even during the summer. The area also has an annual rainfall of as much as 7,800 millimeters. Massive amounts of snow build up in the mountains, then become compressed over a long period of time. This compressed snow turns into glaciers, its sheer weight causing the frozen mass to begin moving downhill. Uppsala Glacier, measuring 60 kilometers in length and 4 kilometers across its peak, is one of the largest glaciers in Patagonia. Glacial motion is actually quite complex. Various tensions act on the glaciers to produce cracks in the ice called crevasses, and ice columns called seracs. A blue sheen permeates off the ice. Due to the minimal presence of bubbles within the ice, as well as the water's high purity, it only reflects blue light. While most of the world's glaciers are retreating, the Perito Moreno Glacier continues a cycle of advancing and retreating even today, and is said that its shape is much the same as it had been for the past 10,000 years. Because it is located in a steep valley, the glacier advances and retreats at a relatively high speed, about 2 meters a day and about 700 meters a year. Due to this speed, the glacier is referred to as a living glacier. The top layer of the glacier is over 10 meters thick. It is an undulating layer of icicles, interspersed with countless holes and crevices. The great cracks heard is the sound of the glacier moving. Ice melt flows over the top of the glaciers. Water below takes the role of a lubricant, helping to keep the glaciers in motion. The top layer of ice was made out of compressed snow that fell in the Andes Mountains several hundred years ago. Though Los Glaciares Park is located at the same latitude in the southern hemisphere as Sakhalin Island is in the northern hemisphere, the climate within the park is moderate, forests spread out in all directions around the glaciers. An abundance of rain, over 1,000 millimeters a year, nurtures the forest trees. Southern beech trees are also found in New Zealand and in Australia, proving that these places were once connected to the South American continent. Mesodendron is a parasitic plant that grows on trees here. Kittoreals are edible mushrooms that the native Indians once ate. About the same size as a ping pong ball, the mushrooms become burls that are part of the tree. Calafate flowers, which are common in Patagonia, have berries that turn purple in the fall. It is said that anyone who eats a Calafate berry is sure to return to Patagonia again someday. Lake Argentino was formed as a result of the nearby glaciers. Twice the size of Japan's Lake Biwa, glaciers rose up hundreds of feet from the surface of this lake 20,000 years ago. Scars in the mountainside were left in the wake of the moving glaciers. The glaciers of Patagonia cut away at the mountains, leaving behind lakes and valleys in their wake. Their tremendous erosive power is likened to God's great plow. Patagonia is one of the world's stormiest regions. After dumping snow in the Andes, the subtropical westerlies turn into strong winds east of the mountains. Because of this wind, the Pampas steppe is always extremely dry, with an annual rainfall of less than 200 millimeters. In this intensely arid region, only grass and small trees can survive. Although it is located only 20 kilometers away from the icy world of the lakes, mountains, and glaciers, the steppe is like a different world. Various creatures suitable to the environment make the Pampas their home. This unique bird is a Darwin's rhea. Like ostriches, the males raise the chicks. Guanacos are animals belonging to the camelid, or camel family. The creature, which is common in Patagonia, was drawn in the wall murals of the native Indians who lived here approximately 10,000 years ago. It is believed that in prehistoric times, Patagonia was covered in rich forests. The area became arid due to moisture-laden winds from the Pacific Ocean being blocked by the Andes, when they were heaved up by a great movement of the Earth's crust. Then, during the Ice Age, this arid grassland became fully covered in ice. The Andes is the great mother that gave birth to the pristine beauty of Patagonia. Snow, falling deep in the mountains, makes the long journey down, before finally ending its trip in one of the Great Lakes.